Happy Friday. Happy Friday, Ace. How you doing?
I'm good, Rizel. How are you?
I'm doing great. If it's y'all's first time tuning in, I just want to say welcome. And this is a live stream where we talk with different experts and companies within the SSI industry, which stands for self-sovereign identity. Today, we are going to chat with a really fun person. I'm going to bring her on stage, Evin from Disco. Before we have you introduce yourself and, we dive into the conversation, I do have a question. I thought of it last minute, as I usually do. And this is our icebreaker question for you and the audience. And I don't know if it's really inclusive, but like I'll try to change it, right? So my question was like, how long do you think it's acceptable to keep a Christmas tree up? But if you don't celebrate Christmas, like I don't know, any other like holidays, like when do you think? I don't know why that thumbs up came up, but when do you think is like too long and like people should put down their decorations?
So thank you guys so much for having me. It is an absolute honor to be here with both of you. My name is Evin McMullen, founder of Disco.xyz, and my view is that personal expression is up to you. And so if you prefer to celebrate your holidays all year round, I encourage you to do so. And I think we're actually going to talk a little bit more about that today, the importance of self-expression and the ability to project your identity, your preferences, your traits to the world in a manner well suited to you. However, if you have a strict homeowners association, I wouldn't suggest this particular attitude.
I love that. That was perfect. Ace, what about you? How long you think is too long?
I mean, I'm lazy, so I don't even put any up because who's gonna take it back down?
Smart.
So no problem is no problem for me.
I thought of this because my Christmas tree is still up, and my friend went in my house yesterday, and they're like, "Rizel, what's going on?" But I'm also lazy, so. And my Christmas tree is cute. It's black, so I just want it up. Self-expression, like Evin said. All right. So now that we had that fun conversation, I would love to know more about you. I think you gave us a little bit about an introduction of yourself, but do you want to expand? Oh wait, you're muted.
You're muted.
Oh my gosh, I gotta work on that Zoom training, guys. So yes, absolutely, would love to share a little bit about how we got to now. So I first learned about decentralized technologies through the world of Bitcoin over 10 years ago at this point, to date myself a little bit.
1 second, Evin. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but actually you haven't introduced yourself yet. So if you can start just a little bit like backtrack.
Absolutely. So
thank you for joining us. So,
yes, for sure, certainly. I realized I said my name and role earlier, but we want to provide a little more context.
Yes.
So my name is Evin McMullen. I am the founder of Disco.xyz, where we believe you are the multifaceted center of the party, just as you are, and should be able to reflect your data and your identity to the world however you decide. So at Disco, our platform supports leaders, the ecosystem level, the protocol level, and even individually to understand the identity of who they're interacting with, whether it's a complete audience or community, or whether an individual. So our data backpack app operates in tandem with your wallet. Just like your physical backpack secures all the stuff you need for your day and your wallet is for your money, your on-chain data backpack allows you to understand and control your data and carry it with you from one place to another. And your wallet, of course, corresponds with your tokens, but we extend the superpowers of your crypto keys so they can protect more than your money. They can protect parts of your identity as well.
I love that concept of a data backpack that you're carrying around with you. I like that as an example. My next quick question, or I think I would love to know, like, how did you get into self-sovereign identity, like that type of space? And if you have any tips for other people who are interested in getting into that space as well.
Certainly.
So I was gonna add, like, we can start just pointing out to the audience with your ad, Big Did Energy. So
Oh
that's like
yeah.
a good place to start. But yeah.
Certainly. So if you, like me, are an enthusiast of decentralized identifier methods and decentralized identity, we're actually going to be refreshing our merch store soon, so you can get matching hats with me. But happy to talk a little bit more about how this particular subject area came to resonate with me. So as we were chatting about a little bit earlier, when I was in undergrad, I was very inspired by the movement toward net neutrality to protect the neutral execution environment of our internet today and allow for the free expression of ideas unencumbered by the censorship of internet service providers. So it was through the works of folks like Larry Lessig and Jonathan Zittrain, who, fortunately, I had some really great professors who introduced us to Bitcoin as a censorship-resistant method, sort of an alternative way to move and store data that was dissimilar from the sort of centralized databases we're used to. It was around this time that sort of the dawn of modern social media became popular. So Facebook and the early days of Instagram and Snapchat. So spent quite a lot of time in school studying the subject matter that my computer science professors called Reddit for credit. So I did a lot of independent studies to better understand how people share data in digital spaces and what that disclosure pattern looks like across apps. Then my career has wound through a variety of human-centered design practices. I started out actually producing in Hollywood, leading the story department, producing music videos and television commercials, helping to support organizations like CERN and the Large Hadron Collider, and launching IBM Watson. Then I worked for a few years in a hardware practice and connected devices, helping to build out the first connected toothbrush, where you could brush your teeth, send your data to your dentist, and then receive free brush heads, discounts on dental insurance, and financial rewards that you could save up for game systems and bicycles. Then, had the opportunity to work on autonomous vehicle design with some brands around the world. And then it was at that point that I discovered my nights and weekends hobby of crypto hackathons and white papers was a real job, where there were companies that would work out the whole time to develop things like smart contracts and token designs. And so I hung up my suit. At the time I was working for Berkshire Hathaway in Omaha, Nebraska, and I went to Brooklyn, New York to work in an apartment above a pizza shop at a company called Consensus, building out a protocol called Ethereum. So that was in 2017, and have been building on chain ever since. And so the reason that identity is so crucial to this experience is that my work in Web 2 showed me that interoperability for user experiences, where you could seamlessly move from one place to another, meant that businesses were swapping data behind your back, trading rumors about you without your knowledge or consent or clear, informed participation. And so it makes sense to me that we should logically centralize data around the party that made it, that we should allow the party or the person the data is written about to be the party who has the most control over their data. Not ultimate control, but more control than others. And so that is my definition of self-sovereignty, an environment in which the subject of data has the most control over it.
That is amazing. I also love the analogy, allowing businesses being able to trade rumors about you behind your back should definitely not be a thing. That's a new word.
I'm just impressed by your career. You did so many awesome things from Hollywood to else. I liked your description of self-sovereign identity, and it made me wonder about how you would describe verifiable credentials. And I actually asked this because I watched the podcast, and I feel like you had a really cute way. It doesn't have to be the same way if you don't remember, but of how you define verifiable credentials. And yeah, I would love to know more from your perspective, because I think something you said was the way people brand it is very technical, and it's not something that the everyday user or person would understand.
Certainly. So verifiable credentials, signed JSON files in accordance with the standards of the World Wide Web Consortium, the people who bring us the internet, are often pretty confusing and technical. I mean, gosh, even, the folks who founded Ethereum sometimes struggle with understanding these concepts. And so we're all still learning together. The way that I like to describe verifiable credentials is sort of like a digital version of the plastic, membership cards and identity cards that you carry in your wallet. Your card from your gym is signed by your gym and says that you are a member. Your card from your alumni association of your university is signed by the university and says that you went there. And so the reason that I believe in the gravity and seriousness of the birth date on your driver's license is because I believe the Department of Motor Vehicles when they make that statement about when you were born or how tall you are. So verifiable credentials are a wonderful way for us to solve what's called the phone home problem. How can I carry around data about myself that other people can read and they can know that I haven't tampered with it? In the same way that they can look at my driver's license and they can tell that I haven't cut it up with scissors. And so the awesome part of verifiable credentials, I believe, one of the most compelling parts is the flexible signature that they can bear, so that anyone, or just about anyone, and quite a lot of key material can sign those credentials. So in the same way that you carry around, perhaps in your wallet, a membership to your gym, a membership to a club, an alumni card, an identification card. They're all from different sources and they all say different things about you, but you can carry all of them. Similarly, in your data backpack, you can carry around proof that we were on this call together, proof that you attended an event in person, or even proof that you've met me IRL if you tap your phone to the NFC chip embedded in my fingernail. And so our data backpacks are the very first way that we could use Ethereum keys to pass signed notes between our wallets, almost like BlackBerry Messenger, passing signed encrypted messages behind the back of the network so that we could extend the security of the protocol with the power of our key signatures in the same way that restaking extends the security of the protocol through rehypothecation.
I love that description. All right, so I feel like we're starting to dive into Disco and some of its features. Do you want to, before we do the demo, give us like, I think you kind of did, but a quick description of Disco? And I'm also curious about like the name. Like, it's such a cute name. What's the reason behind the name?
Well, to start off, we are very literal at Disco about the image and role of a disco ball. So if you imagine the last time you were at a party, you saw a disco ball maybe on the ceiling, near the DJ with some lights reflecting on it, it's a pretty magnificent sight to behold. And it has many different mirrors, many different sides, so it reflects that light very differently depending on how you look at it. At Disco, we believe each individual or each organization is just like a disco ball. It has many facets. There are many names that you go by, your Bitcoin address, your email address, your government name, your handle here on Twitch. But all of those pieces of information, all those identifiers are just different facets of your personality. And now, rather than treating them as fragmented, fractured, separate shards of you, instead we can assemble them into this disco ball because you are the same person who shows up to every one of your names. It's just each of those names reflects you differently. Now, no single identifier, no single address can contain the multitudes that are you. If you remember the movie Fight Club from the 90s, right? There's a line in it, you are more than the contents of your wallet. And so at Disco, our data backpacks allow us to use decentralized identifiers created out of the keys we already use on chain, and giving those sort of wallet keys additional superpowers to secure our data backpacks so that we can carry around verifiable data written about us from one app to another, across protocols, on chain and off chain, wherever we choose to go. So of course, like your physical backpack, your data backpack requires you to decide that you want to share what's inside of it. It's pretty weird if some stranger walks up and sticks their hand in your backpack without your consent, right? That's not standard. And so the way that you receive credentials in your data backpack, they're encrypted against your keys, meaning only you can open them. Sort of like in the same way that when you receive mail to your mailbox, it's encrypted or contained in an envelope, so only you can choose to open it. And so this allows us to, this allowed Disco to essentially invent the consent layer of Web3. Before Disco, there was no way to pass a secret note between keys that could be disclosed to others, to groups, or even on chain. but only with the informed consent and participation of the user. Now, of course, we ask ourselves, how does one fill a data backpack? Where do I receive all of these signed proofs from that I can show my authority with? And so that's why with Disco, after building out our API capabilities and early data backpack, we focused our efforts on supporting issuers of verifiable data. So organizations that can help us fill our data backpacks, helping us to capture the exhaust or proofs of our past actions in a form that others can understand. So perhaps maybe instead of just telling you about this, we'll show you a little bit of a demo. And guys, feel free to stop me if you have any questions at any time. But we're just going to start off with welcoming you to my data backpack.
I do have a quick one
Yes.
before you go into it. I'm assuming you probably talk about it like along the line, but I'm just curious because since I started working with verifiable credentials, I've not had like a reason to connect them with like on-chain, any kind of on-chain connection. And you did mention you've been doing like on-chain stuff for the past couple of years, and I'm assuming you are using verifiable credentials this way as well. So maybe from a slightly technical perspective, before you like go into the demo itself, if you could touch on how that works, or that just the angle of implementation for VCs.
Oh, certainly. Yes. I'm really excited to talk about that. And let's definitely make sure we dig into it, because I think the ability for verifiable credentials to inform how financial liquidity can flow, whether it's rates or permissions of, reading wallet balances or permissions to transact, that can be, persisted across protocols, even into Web 2. And so definitely love that call out, and we'll happily highlight the ways in which we are combining on and off-chain data to provide a more comprehensive view of our audience, and as well as a few alpha leaks for what's to come in the next few weeks. So to start off, welcome to app.disco.xyz. This is my data backpack. So if I were to hop into it, what we are seeing here is a set of credentials that are secured by my crypto keys. So you actually can make this a little bit wider. I think because we're zoomed in, it's a little bit looking a little funny here, but you can see that there are links between my Twitter handle, my Discord handle, my Ethereum address, some decentralized identifiers, and this profile image that I have chosen here. So all of the links in my data backpack as proofs that I own these other handles are not just me typing in those handles, as with a namespace such as ENS or a domain name, where you can just buy whatever you would like on the open market. Instead, I had to prove that I own this Twitter handle, had to prove that I own this Discord handle by posting a public message with those handles containing my public key, and then signing a credential with my keys, attesting in the other direction that those indeed are my social handles. So we create a handshake between your crypto keys and your social handle so that you can prove you own both, not just say you own one with the other. And so here we are getting into the contents of my backpack. You'll see here my inbox. So these are all the credentials I've received. Some I have made public that are visible here so that when I share my backpack with others, they are able to view. And then I, of course, am able to view those that I've sent. So let's dig into what types of credentials we have here. For example, you can see some of these account linkages that relate different decentralized identifiers to my key pairs. You can see that I received a GM from the head of community over at another crypto project. So a GM credential is just a particular schema. GMs are kind of like Facebook-style pokes. So if you want to just say GM, good morning or hello to a friend, you can send a credential from your keys to theirs, and they will receive it in their inbox. Now you can see here that this I is clear, meaning that this is a public credential that I've chosen to expose to others, such that they might view it in my backpack or call the Disco API to be able to resolve it. I can choose to copy the JSON and paste it into any old JWT resolver if I wanted to unroll it in a different environment, or I could choose to make it private, which means it is now encrypted against my keys and no longer visible to other parties. Let's say that I no longer wanted to carry around the fact that I wear a size small t-shirt. Let's say I've changed my t-shirt size, or that's just no longer relevant because this is a JSON file. I can just go ahead and delete it. So no longer associated with me. And so this gasless flexibility allows for a low cost and friendly way to make and collect statements about one another. A few other schemas that you'll see here include a bookmark that I picked up from an email newsletter that I read pretty frequently, as well as some proofs that I've met people in person. Actually, here we can hop on over to my inbox and I'll show you what those look like. So as I mentioned earlier, Disco also supports a variety of cool applications, such as things like decentralized link trees that we call Met IRL, and the ability to exchange Instagram, Twitter, or even developer documentation simply by tapping your phone to my fingernail. And so this is an example of someone who I met in person. We can look up their DidWeb. I can understand their on-chain activity, but here I have a proof that both of us physically interacted IRL. And so I know that address is not a Sybil, and I can contextualize how it is that I came to interact with them. Now, let's say I wanted to, oh, sorry, Rizel, go ahead. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I had follow-up questions. Sorry to interrupt you. One, you keep saying your fingernail. That means you have a verifiable credential in your fingernail?
I can shoot verifiable credentials out of my fingertips.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah. So I'm happy. I'll send you a sample. I had the opportunity to collaborate with some wonderful friends. Winnie, who's an influencer in the Web3 space, as well as Yana, who's the founder of Kiki.world, a cosmetics brand. And she actually also lives on my block in California, which is pretty cool. And so Yana's team over at Kiki manufactured a new form of NFC chip that manufactured a custom injection mold process to produce fingernails with NFC chips embedded that would not break. And so this unique design allows us to embed a custom link in my fingernail such that when you tap your phone to it, you'll be able to connect either your wallet or your email address. And in one click for $0, you can claim that we met in person. What happens on the back end is that we've got a key sitting in the cloud listening for this event that someone has claimed that they've met in person. And that key then signs 2 verifiable credentials, one going to each of them, kind of like a shared secret or 2 halves of a heart, each having half of that proof that they met IRL, and each of them being able to share with others proof that they met this person without having to go back to the source. And so we found that those social graphs are particularly interesting for folks who want to be able to exchange information in person, but also allows you to overlay and better understand the context of who you've interacted with. So, happy to chat about that a little more, but perhaps what would make this even more valuable is to go ahead and send a credential. So let's say if we wanted to send one to, we'll send one to Vitalik.eth, just for sake of saying hello. So we could send him a GM, although we could also send different types of credentials, such as a proof of attendance. That would allow us to fill in some more information about attendance to event. But we'll just send him a simple GM credential. So I can go ahead and preview. It is going from me to Vitalik's address. And there, we're going to go ahead and sign in my wallet. So this is an EIP 712 signature, no gas required, and that credential has been sent. So it's currently sitting in his data backpack, waiting for him to pick it up. Now, if we zoom out a little bit from our individual backpack, the question then becomes, how might I, as an ecosystem leader, an app developer, or a protocol founder, how can I understand who's in my ecosystem? How do I know my audience as people who have interests and preferences and not just piles of tokens and key infrastructure? And so I want to invite us to zoom out a little and then look at the other side of Disco, our platform that supports identity dashboards, so we can understand all of these cool credentials that we've just looked at in my backpack. So let's say as a leader of Disco, I want to understand my ecosystem's identity a little bit better based on how they've interacted with verifiable credentials that I've placed throughout my experiences, whether in email newsletters, in person, or even shooting out of my fingertips. So if we head on over into the Disco dashboard, this is the view that supports our ecosystem and growth leads. And so you can see here, I can review the way that folks have interacted with different credentials from my ecosystem, such as what time of day, what day of the week, or even more contextual information, such as physically, where in the world were they when they went ahead and picked up that credential? What referral path did they follow, if it was digital? and what kinds of schemas am I issuing most, and which addresses are most deeply engaged in my community, so that I can make it even easier to sort and filter. So if we wanted to show you an example of what it means to create a credential using Disco, we could go ahead and create what we call a drop, or being able to use a Google Forms style builder to create a verifiable credential and then distribute it with a link, an NFC chip, or a QR code. So I've gone ahead actually and pre-made a little credential for us here today that we can all share. So you'll see here, I've gone ahead and created a name and a description, chosen an image, done some fun customization, although that yellow text isn't serving us. So maybe we'll say, we'll make that text black. So we have a custom referral path. We can create a custom tweet so that when you claim that credential, you tweet out a message to share it with others. You can also create an allow list where only certain credential holders or addresses are permitted to interact. And then I went ahead and chose our participation schema so that if you're here with us today, you can prove that you participated in this live stream. So I'm going to create this drop. So just signing, a gasless message, and boom, we have created our drop. And now I can distribute the link and wait for your beautiful data and cross-chain reputation information to show up here. So just for fun, I'll go ahead and copy this link and drop it over into the comments. Actually here, I can put it in our private chat. I'll invite you guys to share it. And then this will give us a little interactive element. So then you might ask, well, how do I know where this drop came from? In this particular case, because I've used an ENS address associated with my keys, you know that Evin.eth, or the holder of that NFT and associated namespace, issued this credential. But for for a different gravity of credential, a different seriousness of credential, such as a driver's license, you want to be able to clearly make sure that an important credential is sourced from a trusted issuer, not just from some friendly face on the internet who thought that it would be a cool demo. And so that's why we've built out a fun, accessible version of, you might know them as trusted issuer registries, but we call it the on-chain phone book. And so what this means is that this is the canonical list of businesses on chain, what their names are, what their websites are, what smart contracts or key pairs they use to issue reputation or sign credentials, what protocol, if any, that data might be exposed on, what form of primitive, whether a token standard, an attestation standard, or our beloved verifiable credentials. And then lastly, what schemas are being utilized for that particular use case. So you'll see here, for example, our friends over at Coinbase have gone from being only financial custodians to composable data custodians by publishing or facilitating the publication of KYC proofs on chain that are backed by Coinbase's 3 layers of KYC. Now, you and I both know in our shared implied mental public issuer registry that we know that Coinbase is a legit entity. We've heard of them before, and we probably trust their KYC. However, if you want to know, to figure out where that contract is easily, you're going to have to dig through the OP Stack Gitbook docs in order to find it. And so making our trusted issuers more discoverable is like marketing for their authority, so that other organizations can understand who you're supposed to trust and what that should look like. Any questions there, guys? I know this is a lot to take in, but happy to share a little bit more about this.
Yeah, we have questions from the audience, and I think, for me at least, I'll say there's some parts that I don't understand, since our company doesn't use blockchain. It uses like our own invention, DWN. So I'm like, oh, this is so cool. But I'm also like, I don't know. But okay, first question from the audience is from Andre saying, for sending and receiving verifiable credentials, are you using DIDCOM? By the way, could you explain a little further regarding the handshake process you mentioned? Oh, you're muted again.
I love this question. So I'm a huge fan of DIDCOM. However, there is not quite enough substantive incentive design around the relay nodes for it to really be stable implementation for us to rely on at scale, or at least that was what we encountered when we started building. So we continue to check in with our colleagues and learn about the evolution of this messaging protocol. But we've actually found that for the most part, decentralized messaging is not an urgent need for our partners. Rather, simply being able to exchange JSON files, even in as simple a form as exporting them and sending over email, is flexible enough for some use cases. And so we really wanted to make sure that we facilitated the issuance and management of credentials, but we allowed for their sort of transmission to be facilitated in a way that was well suited to the use case. So one of the beautiful things about verifiable credentials is that it really doesn't matter the way in which you transport them from point A to point B, because in the process of that journey, they are tamper evident. So you don't have to worry about resolving something that's been modified in transit. And then the second part of that question was related to the handshake. So what does it mean to have a bi-directional proof that you own two sets of keys? So if we think about what a sort of a one-directional identity claim can look like, think of something like a domain name. I can buy BarackObama.com, but that doesn't mean I am Barack Obama. That just means I bought a namespace. Similarly, .eth or Ethereum name service names in the form of NFTs are similar to this, or you can simply purchase a namespace. So the challenge there is that I bought or asserted this namespace, but it's not as though the namespace agrees back that it is also me. And so the way that I'm able to achieve that, first from a website perspective, is I can take my public key and I can put it in the .well-known resource of the DNS, or just really anywhere in the front end so that it can be publicly queryable. You can think of this as like the digital equivalent of having a shop on Main Street and putting a sign in the front window with your public key on it that says, if you've seen anything out there in the world signed by the key in this window, know that it came from my shop. And that's the way that, for example, the California Department of Motor Vehicles goes ahead and publicizes their key pair. With social handles, it's a little bit more challenging because, for example, you do not own your X or Twitter profile, so you cannot engage with the DNS as much as we would love to. And so for those owned environments where your method of expression or discoverability is a public post, the way that we link Twitter and your wallet, for example, is that you generate a tweet and then you're able to post that tweet containing a verifiable credential, containing your public key. That's it. And then we encompass that tweet in a signed verifiable credential that you keep in your backpack. And then the complementary credential, kind of the other half of that, is that you sign a credential with your keys that includes sort of reference to that Twitter handle. So you have a signature from your wallet that says, hey, that's my Twitter. And then you have a posted message or signature from your Twitter that says, hey, that's my wallet. So this is the same methodology that we are able to utilize for other social handles such as Discord. Now, you may notice that especially in the sort of Ethereum ecosystem or world of tokens, there are more namespaces that are closer to DNS, where they're sort of purchased or acquired and then linked together. So no single identifier is sufficient for many of these use cases. And so we find that the aggregation of both low assurance and high assurance linkages together gives us the strongest picture of who's behind a set of keys.
Thanks. I think that was a really good explanation. And we even have a user here that says, like, great dive into Disco and how easy it is to create, send, and receive VCs. I kind of want to go back to one thing that you were mentioning, because I feel like we've had a lot of guests on here that have talked about how they use VCs for in an individual perspective. But I really liked the idea of seeing the community metrics. And I have a question on do you think there or what are some untapped opportunities that you see in just the general world for using verifiable credentials to enhance community interaction and growth?
Certainly. So what I've already seen is the use of verifiable credentials almost like badges or proofs of interaction for engaging with different brand touchpoints. For example, we have colleagues who use verifiable credential campaigns like the one we built here together today, which we'll share afterwards in the show notes, that are embedded in email newsletters, so that when you click that link in the email newsletter, you can pull a credential out of it, therefore relating the fact that you read the newsletter to your key pair, so that the writer of the newsletter knows which wallets are reading her newsletter. Similarly, we are able to use credentials almost like programmable points that you can earn anywhere, stamped with information about how they were earned. So if you collect a credential from a newsletter, collect a credential from a Twitter space, collect a credential from meeting someone in person, suddenly you provide a whole lot of context about how those keys have engaged in a variety of different manners, but in the nice, sortable, filterable, context-rich form of our credential schemas. Now, unlike something like an NFT that just is a URI that points to a link elsewhere, that's really tough to sort and filter and really difficult to understand where it came from unless you have a lot of context. And so in this way, credentials are almost like self-contained blockchains. They maintain their own state, they are tamper evident, and you can move them from one environment to another without concern for interruption of that ledger of data. So the use cases that we're starting to see include, brands and organizations that want to be able to recognize the real life or off-chain behaviors, traits, preferences, and qualifications of their community, so that you can shortcut the search process, lower customer acquisition costs, increase the fluidity and experience of being an application developer, and decrease friction with chain developers underneath by allowing for us to lower switching costs between apps and carry reusable data from one place to another.
Thanks. And I feel like I talked a lot. So if Ace has any questions, I also wanted to make a clarification. I misspoke and was like saying that DWNs are our invention, but they're not. They're made by the Decentralized Identity Foundation, and many people from our team are like on the chair of that spec. But just wanted to say that for
Although I will say, when you say DWN, the only person I think of is Daniel Buckner. Shout out Dan, we love you. And so definitely, had the opportunity to learn mostly about DWNs from your colleagues. So as far as I'm concerned, that is the source of helpful data and truth from my experience.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ace. I saw you on mute.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of information. I'm still wrapping my head around a bunch of it. I think the next question for me, we do have a question from the audience, which said, do you use any particular identity wallet in order to implement the backpack?
So we are EVM wallet compatible, which means that you can bring your own EVM keys. And so we support a broad variety of different wallets. However, self-custodial we find is the way to go, because custodial wallets often will have some difficulty exchanging that data in the back end. For the sort of meeting in person or IRL decentralized Linktree experience, we actually have introduced the ability to authenticate with an email address, where we generate DID keys on your behalf in the back end, and now are working through the process of upgrading those to a more sovereign experience. However, removing the requirement to have a wallet first has definitely made some of those interactions a lot friendlier and smoother. So it's been really awesome to kind of work through that and see how we're making it even more expansive and accessible. And also, I realized, guys, we made a quick update in our code this morning to the drops page. And so I think I may have sent a link that is not working so well, but I'll make sure to clear that up on our side. That was an error on my part.
No worries. No worries at all. I was gonna ask, you've talked about it a lot. Probably a bunch that I still need to go learn about myself. But I'm very curious as to what's next in terms of roadmap or development for Disco, and just the kind of problems you're looking forward to solving over the next couple of months.
Well, actually, this is, I think, the perfect time to talk about on-chain data and interactions. So as we saw in the on-chain phone book, there are a number of blockchains listed there where businesses are operating on-chain and writing various different types of reputation. So we'll see here, we've got a few different listed. And so the next step for us is that actually we're currently testing with a few partners what it looks like to bring in on-chain data from multiple chain ecosystems. So instead of your dashboard simply displaying contextual information about your credentials, we are now supporting the ability to aggregate data across multiple chains so that you can understand the net worth of your audience, the asset holdings that they have, the interests that they have indicated on social media, the legitimacy of their addresses based on risk profile and risk appetite, and the likelihood that they can be converted to be a loyal customer of your platform or product. And so incorporating this demographic data that we are able to ascertain by aggregating a variety of different public and private APIs, combining both token data, attestation data, and verifiable credentials gives us a strong, multifaceted picture of who an audience is, including both high assurance and low assurance data, but allowing us to wade through all of that and sense make as sort of the expression of a user, not just their actions in a single application.
Thanks. I actually have there's a question in the audience, but I also have another question. I feel like it's a little taboo and maybe irrelevant to what you just mentioned, but I just remember, like, before I have people come on, I like look up stuff. I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. I think I saw like an interview where you were saying like Disco, like the tooling with verifiable credentials and all that can help communities prevent against like harassment and assault. And I was like, wait, I really want to ask Evin how that's possible.
So there are a lot of different ways that reputation systems can be harmful and helpful to different people, right? Technologies are not opinionated, they just are. And when we create a beautiful use case for a technology, sometimes we create a harmful use case on the other side, depending on how that tool is used. So, for example, public ledgers are opt-in surveillance apparatuses. So, depending on the data that we publish in a globally available platform, there can be consequences for how that data is utilized, or what it means to be exposed. Often, I talk about how minority communities, folks who are not in positions of global authority and power, can sometimes be harmed when their data is shared, when their status is shared. I'm sure in the historical record, we can all think of times when lists of ethnic minorities led to harm at the state level, at a national level, at an international level. Sadly, even within our lifetimes. And so creating lists of minorities and publicly exposing them, assigned to their financial power, might be a concern. When we start to practice our identity rails and our financial rails riding the same tracks, we then allow our freedom to transact to be controlled or informed by how we express our identity and vice versa. This can be an incredible enabling tool, but it can also be an exclusionary tool. And so that's why I think verifiable credentials, with their power to deliver incredible tamper evidence and verifiable data in a consent-first manner, allows us to enjoy the power of public key infrastructure and public ledgers while maintaining the consent and safety of electing where and when to share data, instead of defaulting it to public and forfeiting all consent.
I think that's really like a really interesting perspective. I'm like, since I'm not like in the blockchain space itself, and we're like more blockchain adjacent, I'm like, that's really interesting. I didn't think of it that way. The audience question that we have here, I think before we maybe switch to the next thing, is someone asked like, VCs will hopefully apply to so many industries, but what industry are you most excited to see VCs be used in?
So from a personal perspective, I am personally most excited to see verifiable credentials utilized for discovery. Meaning, I am sick of typing words into a search bar. And I am gosh darn tired of getting good at prompt engineering, talking to ChatGPT in every single different app. Because every time you go to a new app and you interact with an agent or AI-enabled experience, it's like your first day on the internet. You have to reintroduce yourself to that bot, and you have to clearly articulate what it is that you're looking for, even if you ask for something similar from a different bot just the other day. And so I see your data backpack as a way to shortcut the labor of search, to shortcut the labor of prompt engineering, and allow your data and your past intents to inform the content and quality of what you receive, so it's well suited for you. Now, when I say an intent, I mean an action that you undertake with a desire to achieve a state change. Doesn't have to be explicitly financial, but it can result in data that is either settled on chain or settled in a verifiable form, so that when you capture or collect the exhaust or the outcomes of your choices, you kind of can work backwards into a picture of what the preferences or actions you took were to get there.
I like that. Yeah, I really like that. It started making me think of, I think you had a blog post about like filling out forms or not needing to fill out forms.
Yes, yeah. Americans spend 11.5 billion hours a year filling out forms. And so that means that, for most applications, the first thing that we do is fill out information, create a redundant copy that's now at risk in someone else's hands and is taking time and effort away from our busy days. And so if we are able to introduce ourselves with our data and preferences, rather than have to articulate our name and type those things out, not only can we make the job of personalized agents easier, we can actually turn that backpack into an agent. Train it on your data such that instead of you typing into a search bar or typing into ChatGPT, your agent can negotiate with others on your behalf and facilitate opportunities that are served up to you without you having to go out and seek them.
I had no idea about this statistic, but I'm such a huge ambassador for getting rid of onboarding processes. Like, I feel these things, I'm already an API, like I like to put it. I feel these things so many times. Why do I have to keep doing this for the rest of my life? So I'm looking forward to getting rid of that part entirely.
Me too. I think. Wait. I have one more question before we switch back. There was another thing. You wrote something about like virtual events and hackathons, and I wanted to know, or maybe someone in your company. I wanted to know like how VCs or whatever would apply to that situation. Maybe it's the reputation based thing that you mentioned. Just curious about that, and then I will for real. I'll switch to our like fun questions, and we'll wrap up the conversation.
What? This is the fun part. Oh my gosh, you guys are so funny. So in terms of hackathons, we've seen verifiable credentials utilized as, of course, kind of recognitions or prizes to recognize those who have participated and who have won. We've also seen them as like peer-to-peer recommendations, sending a credential from one person to another on your team to say, hey, it was super awesome to work with you. And so that was a really cool sort of experimental way that we saw these things utilized. In a more sort of hackathon and creative project form, we also have worked with some cool independent developers who've built out what are called Farcaster frames, or essentially embedded web apps inside of a social platform so that you can see them in your scrolling feed of content. We cloned the app Gas, which you guys might know. It's like an anonymous compliments app where you are given a prompt such as who has the best taste in music, and then served up the names of a few of your friends. And so in this particular app that we built, you can select a name of your friend who you think has the best music, and they will receive in their data backpack a signed credential attesting to the fact that someone thinks they have great taste in tunes and would definitely hand them the aux cord. And so what we were able to create on the back is a social graph, a reputation graph of about 50,000 people being able to determine who they thought was the best dressed, had the best alpha for tokens, or who was the most likely to be a guest at their Thanksgiving table. And so the awesome thing there, we were able to develop is not only a social or reputational view to understand who the tastemakers were and who had different traits, but also fairly civil resistant data insofar as it's quite a lot of independent parties all agreeing on a shared trait embodied by a given individual without coordinating outside to facilitate that. And so that was a fun and friendly example built by some of our developer colleagues, but was just a really great evidence of the ways in which you can use non-financial actions in Farcaster frames to create verifiable data that can still work with blockchains. And one quick thing that I wanted to note, then we can get into the fun stuff, but Ace, you asked earlier about on-chain interactions and what it means for credentials to interact with the blockchain. So of course, you can validate a credential off-chain and settle it on-chain. You can present a signature that attests to the existence of a different credential to a protocol, and then be able to mint an NFT that you couldn't get access to otherwise. you can wrap a token so that it can only be unwrapped by wallets that have the right credentials as a way to legally and safely distribute airdrops to only those parties that are permitted. You can also utilize verifiable credentials for access control to smart contracts so that you can only lend or borrow, or you receive a certain rate based on the credentials that you have in your backpack. So really excited to have the opportunity to work with teams like Polygon ID, who are really at the forefront of creative use of different kinds of keys and different methods of these proofs.
That sounds amazing. I think the next thing I was actually going to ask was an opportunity for us to see your fingernails. I was going to put your face up. I don't know. I don't think we've done this before. So something like this. Yeah, perfect. I don't know if you all can hear me, but just showing the fingernails and what it looks like. I wanted to do that. Okay, let me go back to what we put. Okay, yeah.
Fabulous manicures everywhere.
Oh no.
Are you there, Rizel?
I'm here. my camera doesn't want to be here though. But yeah, that's so cool. I loved your nails. That was awesome. That was a good call out, Ace. All right, let's switch into some of those fun questions. And also thank you so much for sharing all of that. And we have a comment that said, "Hand them the aux cord. Love this." Yeah, I feel like that's a good way to like build trust and excitement within a community.
Emergent reputation. Yep. There's a lot in that, peer-to-peer attestations may be lower assurance, but they are still valuable at scale.
Yes, I love that. And Angie said, "I love a good nail." I do. I'm really into tech themed nails. All right. First question for the fun questions is what's your favorite food?
Oh, my favorite food, hands down, SpaghettiOs out of a can.
Love that. And then Ace told me we got to change this question because everybody has the same answer, but I forgot to. So what if you could have a superpower, what would it be? And honestly, I feel like you might have a different superpower.
Mind control. Next question.
Mind control. Okay, see, she did have.
That was straight to the point.
Yeah.
I've thought about this already. No need to think about it. Mind control.
You know what? That is a good one because a lot of times, my camera. It's okay. A lot of times people say, "Go ahead."
I was gonna say, I think the question is why mind control?
See, because otherwise there is no reasonable way to get people to remember seed phrases. And so if we want to, shortcut the UX challenge, I feel like that would be a pretty quick way to do it.
Mind control as a service?
I think that's Neuralink. That's, brain function, SaaS.
Sounds good.
All right. And last question is, what's your favorite Beyonce song? I feel like, I don't know if you listen to her, but you came out with a new album.
My mom and I go to Beyonce shows religiously.
Really?
It is a devoted practice in our household. Yes. People think she's very cool when she goes to the grocery store with her on the run tour keychain. But I gotta say, Texas Hold'em is just absolutely putting it down right now. I am in my yeehaw era. I am embracing Beyonce as our country queen. As we were discussing all today, we contain multitudes, and I am here for the multifaceted nature of her repertoire and her disco ball themed birthday show that she played last September, if you'll recall.
Yes, I need a cowboy hat just for this. Love it. All right. So I think the only thing, and Angie is a big Beyonce fan too. Ace and I both clicked at the same time. I think the only thing, I think you had asked me, or you said one thing you wanted to mention was how can people continue to explore this space? And I wanted to leave room for you to also give anything that people any things you want to promote in terms of hey, people should check out this documentation or this upcoming live stream that Disco has or something like that.
Well, thank you so much for that opportunity. I would love to share a little bit more about, how we can have more fun, more experiences, and more confidence in this space, all building together. So as we know, blockchains are not a single player game. That's a database. And so it is more fun with friends, whether building or securing the network. And that's why I highly recommend, especially if you identify as a female or non-binary person, please come join us at boysclub.vip. We're a global community of women and non-binary people on chain and in frontier tech, from AI to blockchains and everywhere in between. And so, we support each other not only with building, exploration, investment, and learning, but it's also just a really great community, and their events are really welcoming all over the world. I would also encourage you to check out shefi.org. SheFi is, again, global community of women and non-binary people, but it is specifically focused on educational curriculum to help everyone feel confident in the world of decentralized finance and key infrastructure. And so Maggie Love, my former colleague, is an incredible educator who does cohorts every few months and makes these resources available both to companies and to individuals, and has scholarships so that no one should be excluded from this conversation if it's important to you. And so both of them have great active Discord channels, a lot of events and content. And of course, if you find a little bit of extra time in your day, I would highly encourage you to check out the W3C documentation for verifiable credentials, my personal favorite when it comes to great specs. And last recommendation, if you want a wild ride of tech history, I am currently reading a book called The Bleeding Edge by Bill Reduchel, who's the former CTO of AOL in the 90s, mentor to folks like Steve Jobs, Steve Case, and more. So reading about his 60 years of experience in leadership and technology. So that's what I'm looking at right now.
I love it, especially the book recommendation as well. Ace, do you have any last things you want to talk about before we wrap up?
No, that was pretty much it. I was getting distracted by looking for the book. But yeah, thank you so much, Evan, for joining. A lot of information I probably understood on aware of like half of it, but I'm happy to check it out more and just learn, because it's always a learning process for us also here on the stream. But definitely thank you for joining, and the audience, Tanya, Angie, Nilo, Andrew, everyone in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us as well.
Well, thank you guys for taking time out of your busy days. Really appreciate everyone in the chat with your great questions, and would welcome the opportunity to come back and visit and answer any of them. You can always find me on Twitter at Proven Authority if you want to follow up.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much too for your time as well. And I know you had a little snafu with the location you were in, so you had to move. So thank you so much for like being flexible and figuring out how to work with things. All right. We'll see y'all next Friday, where we're going to actually talk with a compliance product manager within our company to kind of learn how compliance and regulation works within the Web5 and TBDtv system. So thank you all so much. Bye.
See you in the metaverse. Thank you.